The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
I've divided into two parts. They're both available. Well, the first one is available already on the internet. It's called Part 1 of O'Reilly O'Reilly. And Part 2 will be finished in another week as soon as I can get Lord Monckton out of town and go back to writing. I've learned a lot, though, in the last few days of being with him. He's a brilliant man, and you'll see that shortly. But the last chapter of the newly updated book is entitled One Bad Hombre, America's Last Best Hope, Another Lawman from Arizona, in which I compare the great Sheriff Joe Arpaio to the also great one-time Arizona Sheriff or U.S. Marshal Wyatt Earp. I think Joe deserves that. So knowing that was going to be the final chapter of the book, I asked Lord Monckton, would you like to go down to Tombstone and see the OK Corral? And if you all, how many of you have seen the video online with Lord Monckton looking like something that escaped from a dude ranch? I wouldn't dare say that, but those are his own words. So. But I do agree. But it was great, and we went down there and we filmed this, essentially a commercial for the Cold Case Posse to encourage people to donate to the posse. Now, as a quick advertisement, the books I ordered did not arrive, okay? So I'm going to come back next week if Randy will permit me. He's going to check and see what the schedule is with the books. They should be here by then. You can buy them online at my website, and my cards and the handout that I have outside at the table have the website on it. Any book that's purchased within the next 48 hours at my website, I'm going to donate half of the proceeds to the Cold Case Posse. Thank you. I do have audiobooks of my previous book. What's the name of that one? Uncommon Sense, apparently. That's the name of it. A Call to Arms. And $5 from each of those books, which is half the profit, will go to the posse as well. So, in that book, of course, in that chapter, I compare the looming showdown, or the coming showdown, between Sheriff Arpaio and his Cold Case Posse, headed by Earp lookalike, the mustachioed Mike Zullo, with the Commander-in-Chief. Compare that to the showdown at the OK Corral between Virgil and Wyatt and Morgan Earp and one Doc Holliday. He was apparently sober enough, or maybe he wasn't sober, but he was actually deputized as a member of that posse, another volunteer posse, when they faced the Clantons and the McClourys at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, October 26, 1881. 3 of those bad boys went down. Wyatt Earp was unscathed, and I hope that'll be the case with Sheriff Joe and his posse, but we need to pray for them. Thank you. Crowds gathering on the Sonoran Desert this time are far more ominous, and the stakes much higher. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Interesting phrase, spiritual wickedness in high places. Perhaps your mind, as did mine, leapt immediately to the presidency of the United States. But let's broaden our net. What about the former Speaker of the House? I'm not afraid to name names, but it takes too long, so we'll just go on. We all know who that was. The current Senate Majority Leader, who was the Majority Leader at the time. Do I sound partisan? I'm currently a registered Republican. I did that so that I could vote in the presidential primary. Prior to that, I was a registered independent because I can vote in either primary. Now, I will tell you right here, it'll be a cold day and you know where before I'll be voting Democrat. But I do have issues with those who purport to represent the Constitution and who fail or refuse to stand up for it. Republican or Democrat. And quite frankly, my ire is more specifically directed to those who proclaim to be defenders of the Constitution and who refuse to stand up for it. Thomas Paine, the original author of Common Sense, referred to them as sunshine patriots. And that's exactly what they are. So, spiritual wickedness in high places. How about the current House Speaker? Happens to be a Republican, John Boehner. How about the Arizona congressional delegation? David Schweikert, Jeff Flake, Ben Quayle. I've asked Jeff, of course, about the investigation, knew nothing about it, didn't think it worth his time. Senators John McCain and John Kyle. I doubt either of them have even looked at the videos. The videos, by the way, were what prompted Lord Monckton. You may have seen it live, I don't recall. He saw the obvious handwriting on the wall, and that's why he's involved with us today, because it's so obvious to anyone who bothers to look. And what about our Arizona congressional and senatorial candidates? Matt Salmon, Kirk Adams, Will Cardin, Republicans all. You may have seen I've interviewed each of them on camera. Not one of them would call for an investigation of the president. Not one of them knew anything. I mean, they were aware of it, or so they said. Not one of them knew anything substantive about the investigation by Sheriff Arpaio right here in their own county. Didn't consider it worth their time. Let's not forget Arizona House Speaker Andy Tobin, Arizona Senate President Steve Pierce. Neither allowed an eligibility bill to even be assigned to committee. This is a so-called veto-proof Republican legislature. We have a Republican governor, and our Republican leadership, so-called conservatives, I don't like the word rhino, I use the word kind of, conservative in name only, because I don't care which party they're from. The so-called conservatives wouldn't even let an eligibility bill be assigned to committee. Now what that bill said essentially was anyone running for any office, state or national, should have to submit to the same level of proof that we have to submit. This is really difficult, to get a driver's license, to get a passport, to get a social security number, or to get employment in this state or any other state in the country. And we have a president who's not even been able to pass E-Verify. But these Republican so-called conservative leaders would not even allow such a bill to be assigned to a committee where it could be debated. I have a problem with that. I'm sure you do too. There's more to it. They also refused the petition prepared essentially by the Surprise and Sunrise or Sun City West Tea Parties, where we spoke last night, urging the legislature to, I'm not sure what the exact format of it was, but to urge the Secretary of State to require the state of Hawaii to certify his eligibility. Okay, and let's not leave out Ken Bennett. A number of Tea Party leaders in this state and other Tea Party activists started an email chain with him, encouraging him, basically demanding of him, that he require the state of Hawaii to verify that that birth certificate was valid. And Ken Bennett finally did, after he did, and at some point 8 weeks later they responded, as you know, last week. Just happened to be the day after Mike Zullo arrived in Hawaii. But what they asked for originally, we understand what Ken Bennett asked for, was for them to certify that the birth certificate at whitehouse.gov was the same birth certificate that they hold in their vault. They wouldn't do it. What they did instead was to say very carefully, and this was assisted, we don't know. We think it was upon the advice of the Attorney General of Hawaii, because they've been involved in this whole thing. We don't know that for sure, at least I don't. But basically what they said is that the information on the whitehouse.gov image, because that's all it is an image, a virtual image, was the same as the information in the vault. In fact, they said, very clever word, identical to the information in the vault, trying to make it sound like, hey, we answered your question. No, you didn't answer the question. We didn't ask if the information was the same. We asked if that certificate, that image on the White House website was the same as the document that's allegedly in the vault. And they refused to answer. So there we have it. Now Ken Bennett, and I happen to be on the email chain, Ken Bennett apparently gleefully accepted their word. And if you read my book, I have to tell you that the state of Hawaii does not have clean hands. And this is a very thick book because there's a lot of evidence in here and a lot of documenting of malfeasance. So the bottom line is they refused to certify or to verify that that was the same document. So we do not know. And by the way, if you think a virtual document is proof of anything, next time one of your grandchildren needs to get a driver's license, you just go with them. And when they ask to see the certified birth certificate with the raised seal, have him or her just tell, it's on my MySpace page. You think that's going to fly? They're going to laugh at you, and if you persist, you'll probably be arrested. And yet that's the level of proof that we've now accepted for the man that occupies the Oval Office at 1600 Pennsylvania. I've directed at those on the right. I have a long list here. I'm not going to go through and read it. There are 35 names here, starting with Bill O'Reilly. This is Bill, by the way. It's kind of coincidental. His recent book is about Lincoln. Well, that's supposed to be Lincoln there on Mount Rushmore. I understand Barack Obama wants to be a fifth, but he's having a problem with the environmentalists, so it may not happen. But that is, in fact, Bill O'Reilly, William James O'Reilly Jr. This is his boss, Rupert Murdoch, who's a carbon copy for Teddy Roosevelt, so that worked out well. Those two are on my list. The list goes on and on. Glenn Beck is even on that list. One of my favorite all-time people, Walter Williams, is on that list. These are people, Walter, to my knowledge, has never disparaged those who have stood up for this issue. Glenn Beck has savagely attacked anyone who would raise the issue. I'm going to have to jump to the end of my remarks. So I'm going to read to you a few things from Barack Obama's favorite text. Now, what would that be? Well, besides, it's not the Koran. Well, it may be. I don't know. It's called Rules for Radicals. Okay, now, believe it or not, because sometimes when I speak to these groups, I come off sounding kind of negative, but like Randy, I am absolutely optimistic about the future of America. I am 100% optimistic. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have a lot ahead of us. We do. We need to be prepared. But I believe that God is not finished with us yet. He raised up this nation, and He raised up the men that wrote the Constitution. They were not perfect men. I abhor slavery. I'm sure everyone in this room does. It was a fact of the day, and now we've done away with it. We fought a war to do away with it. Nonetheless, the Constitution was an inspired document. And the United States of America, I happen to be Latter-day Saints, we refer to it as the Promised Land. I think people, Americans of all faiths, believe this is the Promised Land. And so God has a reason for this nation, and I do not believe He's finished with it. So therefore, we're going to save the Constitution, and we're going to save the United States of America. The book, Barack's favorite book, is called Rules for Radicals. I'm just going to end by reading just a few quick things. I started to tell you I'm a positive person, and so I do not like reading books like this. I don't want to read. I haven't, I'll admit. Lord Monckton probably read it several times, but I haven't read the Communist Manifesto. Okay, it would probably be informative, to know what the other side's doing. But I've read enough of Rules for Radicals that I have to tell you, it is an eye-opener. Here's the beginning, or one of the beginnings. First of all, do you know who it was dedicated to? Lucifer. Now, You know, apparently they didn't have internet back then. They've since removed it because people were finding out, okay? Others besides their disciples, if you will, were reading the book. It's literally, or it was, dedicated to Lucifer, the first radical. And that should tell you something. Lucifer is the father of lies. That's who this book was dedicated to. Okay, here's one of the propositions. A Marxist begins with his prime truth that all evils are caused by the exploitation of the proletariat by the capitalists. From this, he logically proceeds to the revolution, to the end capitalism, then into the third stage of reorganization, into a new social order of the dictatorship of the proletariat. How many of you think the proletariat are ever going to be the dictators, or you think it's going to be one man like Joseph Stalin, or somebody like that, Fidel Castro, Pol Pot, you name it? That's what it's going to be. It's not going to be a dictatorship of the proletariat. And finally, get this, the last stage, the political paradise of communism. You heard of anybody escaping the United States to go to Cuba on a boat lately? A rowboat? No, you haven't. True revolutionaries, now this is important because you look at Barack Obama, I mean, with a teleprompter, he's pretty smooth. He dresses even better than I do. True revolutionaries do not flaunt their radicalism, Alinsky taught. They cut their hair. Some of us just lose it. Put on suits. By the way, this is not describing me, hopefully. Put on suits. This is, by the way, describing one Van Jones, if you know who that is. And infiltrate the system from within. Alinsky viewed revolution as a slow, patient process. Okay, here's a couple of rules. Fourth rule. You'll believe this if you didn't know it already. Ridicule is man's most potent weapon. Ask all these people on my list, starting with Bill O'Reilly, why they will not speak out on this issue. Ask Lord Monckton. It's just that he's one brave man, and he doesn't care what the left says about him. But he'll tell you more about that in a minute. Ridicule is your most potent weapon. Pick the target. This is Rule 13. Freeze it, personalize it, then polarize it. Ninth rule, and this one is hugely important on this issue of the eligibility. The threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. I don't know what has caused all of these people, I have my beliefs. I do not know specifically what has caused the vast majority of the conservatives to abdicate on this issue. But the vast majority have. Joseph Farah, Floyd Brown at the Western Center for Journalism, Michael Savage, Alex Jones. Rush Limbaugh has at least been willing to broach the subject. He has not been a champion. There are 3 or 4 only, and there are 30 or 40, just that I know, national figures who have absolutely refused to wade into this issue. But Lord Monckton has a solution for that, which you'll be hearing more about soon. I'm pretty much done. I just want to encourage you to do one thing. Satan, or Lucifer, is the father of lies. Our greatest weapon is the truth. Okay? This battle will be won by the people in this audience. There are a lot of people like Lord Monckton and others who will help lead the movement. He's going to do it sort of unofficially from the side. But it will be won because of the people in this room speaking the truth and not apologizing for knowing things that no one else is willing to admit. Thank you, and God bless America. Thank you.
Tom will have his books out in the lobby next week. They did not arrive this week. By the way, Ken Bennett, for some odd reason, after he came here and spoke, remember? He went on a radio station the very next day and apologized for any offense that he might have given for Arizona.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.